We got to start with Triston McKenzie. We told you yesterday that he had a sore arm and that he was going to be out. We kind of speculated at that time that he wasn't going to be ready for his first start. I mean, otherwise, you probably wouldn't have even heard anything about it. But now comes news that he has a strain of basically it's the big, strong, powerful muscle behind your right shoulder, behind your pitching shoulder.
Yeah, that's bad.
It is bad. The good news is that it wasn't anything that was torn or structural in that way.
Right.
It's just what we talked about. It's overuse early in the season. He probably ramped up too quickly, wasn't ready to go full speed, and now he's up to 8 weeks was what caught my attention.
And you wonder if that's why he struggled in spring training. Maybe it was bothering a little and he thought he could pitch through it. Who knows?
Yeah.
He's a young pitcher. He's had injury problems in the past. A couple of years ago, he missed almost the whole season. We've talked about his size. He's 6'5", 165, I think we said yesterday. It's really unfortunate. I thought I was thinking, I'm doing my baseball preview on my Bet Rivers podcast tomorrow, and I was thinking until a week ago of picking him as like one of my surprise Cy Young candidates.
He was my dark horse.
Yeah,
Cy Young.
and this is a huge disappointment. Like they say, up to 8 weeks. Who knows? I mean, and even then, like if he's, what's he going to look like by the time we get to June? So, in my mind, I'm almost thinking like he's out for half the season. Now, hopefully it's not that bad, but for a rotation that I was already a little nervous about the back end. Now, Plesac's been okay. Savali pitched really well yesterday.
They've both been pretty good this spring.
I just can't get, I got to see them do it consistently when it matters.
I know you were down on both of them last year, but everyone I talked to out in Goodyear said the same thing. They were hurt. Both of them were hurt. They were pitching hurt all year, and that happens. I mean, when guys are trying to work through injuries, you're not 100%, and if you're bringing anything but your A game, you're going to get beat.
I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about both. I don't think either's got great stuff.
No,
right?
But they were both really good 2 years ago.
They were. My concern, especially with Plesac, is I'm a little worried he's in that Bauer Clevenger mode of guy. Like he's like I'm not worried about that with Savale, but I'm a little worried about that with Plesac. Like he's got other priorities sometimes. I just didn't. Not that this on its own was that big a deal, but the whole thing with where they were out breaking the COVID rules, just the way he lied about it. I think that says something about your character. Yeah. And so I have some concerns there. Listen,
fair.
They're going to need these guys.
Yeah, it's funny. Yesterday we were talking about how last year one of the things that they really had going in their favor was they didn't have any injuries.
Right.
They pretty much skated through the season. I mean, obviously Jose played with the thumb the second half, but he played through it, and they still made a little run in the playoffs. Those things tend to wash out over a large enough time.
Absolutely.
So if you go 1 year and you're super healthy, the odds are super against you that you're not going to do it again.
That's why I always caution people when they talk about who you don't need and why you don't need to go get somebody else. Because what happens is people forget, hey, bro, you got injuries that happen. Some 2 or 3 people can go down. This is just before the season. What happens if you get another 2 guys that go down, and it doesn't have to be for a long, sustained period of time. It could be a week. And you're looking around and saying, okay, well, what are we going to do in scramble? That's why I'm always aggressive when it comes to getting reinforcements because, if you're betting on perfect health, you're in trouble because that's just not the way sports works.
And I've been talking about, all offseason, I was saying I'd like to see the Guardians get a veteran starter in the mix. Yeah. And I know you're relying on they got these young pitchers that they really like, but those guys are not starting the season in the big leagues, those top pitching prospects.
What do you think they'll do, Bull? Will they move Eli Morgan into the rotation?
It's a good question. He struggled when he started.
He did, but he looked a lot better out of the bullpen. And I wonder if he's figured some things out. Maybe they might give him a spot
It's possible.
start.
That happened with Carrasco. Remember Carrasco really struggled?
I do remember.
They moved him to the pen. He was great, and he was great after that.
They moved him back to the starting rotation.
And so they've had some success doing that. There's not a great option. Cody Morris is hurt right now.
Right.
He's starting the season, and so is Sam Hentges. I know he's not,
Right.
I mean, so they had the kid Xavion Curry, who they just sent down. He pitched a little.
Yeah.
You got, what's his name, Pilkington, who pitched a little last year.
He did. He had some spots started.
This is why, for a lot of people who are fringe baseball people, they get frustrated because you hear these names, right? You hear all of these great names of young pitchers, you got young players, but they're in the minors, right? Yeah. So you said something very just off cuff.
Yeah.
All those young kids can't be brought up.
I'd say they can't. No, I'm saying they won't.
Why?
Well, in some cases, teams like the Guardians don't bring up guys right away for money reasons.
Clock.
And that's unfortunate.
Their big league clock starts
It's a bad part of baseball. Now, in their defense.
They did that with Frankie Lindor famously a couple years ago.
In their defense, I don't think these guys are quite ready to pitch in the big
leagues. Do they have
leagues.
options? Like, can't they go back once they come up?
They can.
Yeah, they can, but you don't want to do it too soon. Particularly, I think more with pitchers than hitters. A hitter can go through an 0 for 12. Hitters do that. I was worried with Eli Morgan when he made his first start, and I talked to him about this in Goodyear. I was at the game.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember. It was that game that the wind was blowing about 50 miles an hour. It was raining sideways, and they played it.
Yeah.
And the next day it was 60 and sunny, and they canceled it.
Right.
And no one could figure it out. And I talked to Eli about that, and I said, not only did they keep you out there, he was getting shelled. It was his first big league start.
Yeah.
I was worried that was going to set him back.
Yeah.
I was just like, get that kid out of there before you damage his psyche.
Right.
And he talked about that game, and it can set a pitcher back. If a guy's not ready and he comes up to the big leagues and he gets shelled, now he's got that swimming in the back of his mind.
Their top two healthy pitching prospects have not had a lot of time in the high minors yet.
No, they haven't.
So I don't know that they're I'm not sure that they're quite ready
Bibby's
yet.
the guy they love.
I do hate when they don't call up guys, not just the Guardians, other teams do it. Yeah. They've changed the rules now to try to dissuade teams from doing that. It's bad for the sport.
I think so too.
Because one of the things that the Indians have an advantage of, and some of these other smaller market teams, is they have an advantage to the fact that they have a really good minor league program.
Right.
They got good. They scout well. They got prospects down there. So why not use that to an advantage? If you got guys that are getting hurt, instead of going out trading for big name guys, bring your young guys up.
Listen, we may see one of these guys. Bibby, for example.
I bet we do.
We might. I don't know if we'll see him right off the bat.
Yeah.
But maybe we see him 4 weeks in But I'd love them. Like right now, teams are cutting down. Right.
Yeah.
The roster's got to be set by I think tomorrow night, maybe Thursday morning at 26. Right.
Right.
So there's some teams that have some pitching depth. Maybe you grab a veteran guy, even if he's a fifth starter, to get you 4 or 5 starts till you think you're ready. Maybe let Bibby get a few starts in the minors.
Yeah.
Get his feet wet. Okay, he's pitching great. Well, let's bring him up now.
I think the good news here is, at least in April, we're considering worst case scenario, 8 weeks.
Right.
He's young.
Yes.
He's healthy.
Yes.
It might not be 8 weeks. If you can even push the timeline up to mid-May, you don't play every day in April.
No.
You get more
skip
off
that fifth
days.
starter spot.
So you can probably stretch your starters out to 4 for the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm going to look at the
schedule.
schedule.
And then once you get into a spot where you have 5 games in 5 days or 6 days and you need that fifth starter, maybe you call a guy up, give him a look, give him a start, maybe Pilkington, a guy that's done it. I feel much more comfortable doing that with a guy that's done it.
Sure.
And then
I
you
think
just
that's
try to
the way
bridge
to go.
The gap till he's back.
Right. I think the way to go in the beginning of the year is with one of these guys who may not have the best stuff but has seen some big league time, or go pluck a veteran who's not going to make a roster.
I remember Tito talking. I asked, so who's going to be the guy this year? Because last year they had 17 guys made their big league debuts. And I said, it's almost, when you do the math, there's not going to be that much opportunity. The 2 corner outfield spots are now spoken for. Last year they were not. So there really isn't a hole that they're looking to fill like they were last year. And he said this, and others said this. It's baseball. There's going to be opportunities.
Always is.
Guys are going to be hurt. We believe that the guys that we put in to take their place are going to do just fine. So that's what we have to,
and remember,
we have to bank on that.
With young players especially, Jay, you know this, like as good as Oscar Gonzalez was last year, if he's batting a $152 at the end of April, he's going to the minors. Now, we don't want that to happen.
You might have a couple of guys that come up, and you're like, man, you're trash right now. We got to sit you down, dog.
Yeah, Jimenez isn't hitting the ball great. I'll tell you who's hitting the ball great, and I know you'll dismiss it because it's spring training, and so do
Miles Straw.
Miles Straw's hitting damn near 400.
My problem with spring training stats is I'm not paying attention to who they're doing it off.
No, you're right.
Or what that pitcher's working on that day. I just think I take all spring training with a grain of salt.
Here's the thing. I do too, but here's the thing. If it was 200, we would be saying the same thing. I'm not buying it. It's spring training. Wait till the season starts. I would much rather it be 400 than 200.
Sure, for a guy like Straw who has struggled, good.
He needs that confidence.
For him.
Yeah, it's good for his confidence.
I mean, listen, we don't need this lineup as we expected to be better. Miles Straw is last year Miles Straw was one of 3 big weak spots in the lineup.
He was.
Now he's the worst hitter in the lineup.
Offensively.
Right, offensively. Now he's at least in theory, the worst hitter in the lineup.
Yeah.
Well, I can live with him as my worst hitter because at least forget the defense, which obviously he's excellent at, but even from an offensive standpoint, he has the ability to steal bases, he has the ability to run the bases, as opposed to like a guy with Austin Hedges who's like
brought nothing to the party.
Right?
Every once in a while he'd run into one.
Right.
And that was all he brought you.
Yeah, that was it. He couldn't run the bases. He was so at least Straw, if he gets on base, I don't need Straw to be great offensively. If he can get to the point where he's like slightly below average, I'll take it.
Are we going to pick a win total for the Guardians? We're going to do that tomorrow before the season starts? Thursday, okay.
We have
because I think I'm going to adjust mine.
We have an entire over-under. We're going to do a ton of betting props with the Guardians, player props, and all that. I do have a question for you, Jay, on this topic, though. You pitched professionally, and you
use that term very loosely,
but
not at that
pitch,
level,
whatever.
but yeah.
You know this maybe more than most, not maybe. Why is it harder on the mental aspect for young pitchers who come up, as you and Bull mentioned, if they come up early, they get rocked, they may never find that confidence again, as opposed to a guy like, in basketball, he gets off to a rough start, but his career still can take off later. Why is it in baseball that it's harder to refine that confidence?
That's a good question because your skill set in basketball is, obviously there's defense involved, but your skill set is what your skill set is. If you can stand in the corner and nail threes all day long, you can do that whether you're playing on a playground or whether you're playing against an NBA player, as long as you've got a lane and an open shot. In baseball, particularly as the pitcher, your skill set is only half the equation. It's the other player that you're facing skill set that determines your success. So as these guys come through the minor leagues, they're oftentimes the best guy on their team, and they're having a lot of success. And they've never been in a spot where they're just getting racked. And then they come up to the big leagues and they're seeing the best 750 hitters in the world. And now all of a sudden, they start to question their skill set if guys are starting to square the ball up and put it in play a lot. So it does have a lot to do with what the opponent is doing to what you're doing to them.
So with that in mind, and then Bull.
But I would say, before you move on, Mike, I would say also that there are some basketball players that suck early and they don't turn out to be
golfers, football players,
about them.
Everything. You can
and
get
there
into a
are
mental slump.
baseball pitchers who suck early and are able to get over it.
Sure.
But some guys can get screwed up.
Triston McKenzie got absolutely hammered early in his career.
Yeah,
but he turned it around.
Question to follow up on that, though, Jay, and then we'll move on to some Browns talk. But when is the right time, in your opinion, for Francona, or really any manager, to call up a young guy? Like, is there something he has to show to prove he's ready to take that step? Or in your opinion, what is it?
For me, it's stuff. I was watching guys throw bullpen in Goodyear, and there's nobody in the batter's box. I'm just looking at their stuff. And there's some guys I'm nodding my head like, oh, my God, yeah, he's got command of everything. And when you're throwing a bullpen, you'll work in and out, up and down. So the one thing that a pitching coach or a manager wants to see is, are you hitting the spot they're telling you to hit? So give me a cutter low and away.
Yeah.
Are you throwing the ball there?
Yeah.
And if you're doing that consistently with 2, and particularly if you can do it with 3 pitches, you're ready.
I think also,
I don't understand. Well, if you're a batter, like I think sometimes you got to realize, if you're going to pitch, right, the only thing you can do is throw strikes and put it over the plate, right? And under certain circumstances, if you're a hitter, the hitter just makes a great, it's a great play.
Yeah, but you kind of simplify it and say if you're a pitcher, all you have to do is throw it over the plate. It's really way more than that.
Yeah, sure. It's way more than that.
You got to change speeds effectively.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got to work up. You've got to work down. You really have to work in.
Sure. And I get what you're saying.
Sometimes
the pitcher makes a great pitch and the hitter just makes a great play, or vice versa.
And that's right. And see if you agree with this.
Yeah.
In my mind,
8
out of 10 times, if you have a top-line pitcher against a top-line hitter, the top-line pitcher has the advantage.
Yeah, at least 8 out of 10.
Because they already have the advantage. If you fail 7 times out of 10 for your career, you're going to the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
So like.
Well, but think about it from this perspective, Jay. Usually, when the hitter wins that battle, it's often because the pitcher made a mistake.
Very much so.
Not because the hitter just, because how often does a great pitcher get beat on a great pitch?
I know.
That
it doesn't happen very
happens.
often.
So my thing would be, if I'm a pitching coach, is, hey, look, all you got to do is hit your spots. Don't make the mistake.
Right.
And usually you're going to get them out.
That's easier said than done for a young pitcher.
You're right.
Yeah.
It is very – and I will tell you this, because in the few minor league games that I pitched, You know, I always say that the one thing that never changes in sports is the free throw. If you think about it, the circumstances are always the same, minus the score. So there is some pressure. But pitching is pitching. It's always 60 feet, 6 inches. The box is what it is. The plate is what it is. But you feel pressure based on situations. When I was pitching in front of a full house in a minor league game, the ball got sweaty. Yeah. You know, everything got a little more tense. And you tend to struggle to get your command early on. I love the scenario I mentioned, the great pitcher versus great hitter. That's why I love the end of the WBC so much.
Yeah.
It was 1-2 in baseball.
That's right.
It was Mike Trout, the dominant of his time hitter, against Shohei Ohtani, and the pitcher won. Now, other famous battles, the one that comes to mind for me, Kirk Gibson versus Dennis Eckersley.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget Eckersley mouthing the words, wow.
Yeah.
After, he beat him.
Of course, Rajay Davis, the great hitter, against Aroldis Chapman. By the way, last thing real quick. And then
one of the all-time great matchups.
Yes, it was. One other thing I would say about stuff with pitchers, I think the power pitcher, nowadays it seems like everybody's a power pitcher.
Right.
The power pitchers can often adjust to the big leagues quicker because at least you can overpower a guy. Right. Like where the control guy, the guy,
the soft thrower.
Those guys take time to develop.
They do.
Greg Maddux had a 5.60 ERA in his first year in the big leagues with the Cubs. 5.60.
He's a great example of exactly what you're talking about. Maddux wasn't a hard thrower at all.
No.
Maddux today, I don't know if he would get a look.
Well, he was a little hard. He threw a little harder when he was young. Not hard. He wasn't a hard thrower.
He was never an overpowering pitcher.
But then he became kind of like what Kyle Hendricks is now. Just pinpoint control.
They kind of cheated for him, though.
Well, he earned that.
But they were doing that for everybody. For all good pitchers.
These balls is way out here.
I know, but here's what that is. When guys prove over a number of years that they're hitting every single spot they're trying to hit, like the umpire can see if the catcher doesn't move his glove.
Right.
So if the catcher sets up low and out.
That's right.
And the ball is right there.
They're going to call it.
That's where he wanted it to be.
The umping
and now
is better
they start to stretch the zone for those guys.
Even after the guy threw him out of the game for not having the ball?
Get
these dudes up out of here. Give me AccuTrack.
Don't worry.
By the way, a name, I was just quickly looking through my baseball rosters. A name I think the Guardians should go after, an interesting pitcher, Anthony DeSclafani, veteran pitcher, was with Cincinnati for a while.
I don't know him.
He's now with the Giants. And he's not in their rotation. He's a guy who's been a starter. But the Giants have a very deep rotation.
Always been in the National League, I think.
Always
right?
been in the National League.
I haven't seen him.
I'm trying to think if he had spent 1 year. No, I don't think so. I think it's all been Cincinnati and San Francisco, if I remember correctly. And he's not in the Giants' rotation. They could use another
If they
bat.
trade for this guy, I'm going to fall out of my chair right now.
I think it's possible.
All right.
He owns a car wash in St. Louis, too.
And he's a guy, he's an interesting guy, not a star.
Right.
I don't even know what his numbers were last year, but he's a solid starting pitcher.
McNuggets.